What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue. This week's episode is going to be a little bit interesting because as we draw closer and closer to the first set of 2022 known as the Grand Creators, we have to look at one of the biggest questions that gets asked a lot, and I do apologize. I had to move my camera a little bit. The question being will the Grand Creators change the meta for the 2022 format? I'm going to answer that question right now. I know that MST TV, Tombox, I know that he opened up a couple of boxes. Excuse me. I know that Jobber also opened up a box as well. So that really does nothing. That really does nothing. So for today's video, I'm actually going to not only review the new cards that are in the set, but I'm also going to reveal the set list and give you guys my thoughts on this set. So going in numerical order, first up we have Yu-Gi-Oh, Punk, Sharakusai, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which is a 3-star Earth Psychic Tuner with 1200 attack and 600 defense. Each of these Punk 3-star monsters, 8-star monsters have their own. So each of the 3-star monsters has their own effects where you pay 600 life points, but they're different. They are so different from one another. This one, Shirakusai, has the effect where you pay 600 life points and you get to fusion summon a monster from your extra deck using the monsters from your hand or field as the material. And there's also a second effect where you get to pay 600 life points, and after the effect resolves, you're allowed to synchro summon as well using monsters you control as the material, which means you can also use this card as the material as well for a fusion or a synchro, depending on which one you want to do, which is not too shabby. Then of course we have Gagaku Punk Wagon. I believe that's how it's pronounced. This one's attack and defense is 900 attack, 600 defense, and it has the effect where you pay 600 and you get to basically spell Rhoda. It's basically a Rhoda but for spells. You get to add a Punk spell to your hand, and when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets your Punk monsters that you have on the field, or when they target one of them for an attack, and it's actually a quick effect, you get to actually draw one card. So not only is this spell Rhoda, but it's also it's also a +1. You're basically drawing cards, and I believe it's only one. And I believe I believe it's not. I believe that I don't think that's continuous. To be honest, I don't think it's continuous. But next we have Jory, Punk, Madam Spider. This one has the effect where you pay 600 life points and you get to add a Punk trap to your hand. And when you activate a Punk card or effect, it targets a card that your opponent controls, obviously except during the damage step. As a quick effect, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and its attack becomes half its current attack until the end of the turn. So not only is this trap Rhoda, but it's also a way to ensure that your opponent's monsters are destroyed, which is not too bad. It's not too bad at all. And then the last 3-star monster is No Punk Ze Amin. I believe that's how it's pronounced. This one is basically Stratos because you get to pay 600 life points, add a Punk monster from your deck to your hand. So it's basically Stratos for the deck, and it also has an effect where if it's sent to the grave, you can target a Punk monster you control, and it gains 600 attack. So not too shabby, not too shabby. But as far as the 8-star monsters, they have their own different effects. They have their own different effects. So first up, we have No Punk Foxy Toon, which is an 8-star light beast with 2300 attack and 2600 defense. And its effect reads: once per turn, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. So you use each of the following effects once per turn. You contribute 1 Punk monster, special summon this card from your hand. You can send this card from your hand or field to the grave. From your hand or field to the grave, send a card from your hand to the grave, and if you do, special summon 1 Punk monster from your deck except a level 8 monster. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. Basically, it's not too bad. It's basically a Cyber Dragon. So, I mean, that's not too shabby. Not too shabby. But the only downside with each of these, especially with the 3 stars, is the fact that with the first one that I had talked about, you can easily get Ghost Reaper, because if you're going up against a mirror match, or if you're going up against a deck that has whose extra deck is vaguely similar, Ghost Reaper will come into play so drastically. But as far as the other 3, it's gonna get ashed. But another thing though is that it can also, and this might be a little bit crazy to theorize, but it can also miss timing. That's like one of the biggest downfalls of these newer archetypes, is that sometimes the new archetypes, depending on the style of deck you build, it can miss timing. So that's one thing that they have to steer clear of, is that right there. But Ogre Dance is actually kind of a crazy one, because Ogre Dance was actually one of the first cards that I talked about. But if you guys don't remember, the effect reads: once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can make this card gain attack equal to that monster to that opponent's monster's original attack until the end of the turn. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. You can contribute a Punk monster, special summon this card from your hand. You can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, add a Punk monster from your deck to your hand, except a level 8 monster. So they both have the same thing, but so their second and third effects are basically the same, but their first effects are so different from one another. So again, it can miss timing. You just gotta be careful with that. Next up, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Rising card, which is actually the fusion, and requires 2 Punk monsters. You contribute this fusion summon card, supposed to summon up to 2 Punk monsters with different names from each other from your hand and or deck, except level 8 monsters in defense position. If you single summon using this card as material, you can target a Punk monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase of this turn. You can only use each effect once per turn. So what's cool about this is that you can actually use this card as the material to go into this next one, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Amazing Dragon, which is probably the best card in the archetype, and you basically get to you can actually target this card to give it a second attack. So it acts as sort of like a Cyber Twin Dragon of sorts, which is just absolutely nuts. It's just really nutty. But Amazing Dragon has the effect where where it reads, if this card is synchro summon, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of level 3 second monsters with different names you control, and in your graveyard return them to the hand. Yeah, it's what's known as an omni. It's basically it's what's known as an omnicapulse. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is you can target any type of card and jump it back to the hand, which is just absolutely insane. And its other effect reads you can target one punk monster in your grave except this card, special summon it. You can only use the effects once per turn and only once that turn. So not only is this an Omni Compulse, but it's also a Monster Reborn, which is just absolutely insane. It's actually pretty good, I have to admit. Next up we have Gagaku Punk Wild Picking, which is a continuous spell, and the effect reads, at the start of the damage step, if your punk monster battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card in its owner's spell trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect. Punk monsters you currently control cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So it's basically a trap hole. It's basically it's kind of like it's kind of like a much more revamped version of what's that one? I can't even think of it. I cannot even think of it. It's an older card from what, GX, I think, somewhere on there. It's not too bad, not too shabby. And also the other one is Crash Beat, and it says if your opponent activates a card or effect that targets your punk monster or monsters, you can target a card your opponent controls to destroy. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card in its own spell traps is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect. This turn, your opponent cannot target punk monsters you control with card effect, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. So not only is this a sort of like a trap-hole MST, but it's also a protection to ensure that your monsters stay on the field no matter what, which is not too shabby. And then of course we have Jory Punk Dangerous Gabu, where it's basically where it's sort of like Solemn Judgment, I guess, Draining Shields, perhaps, somewhere on there. It's kind of similar. Which is kind of crazy. But with Dangerous Gabu, it focuses on negating one of your opponent's monster effects, if you will. Nashiwari Surprise focuses on the set cards that your opponent may have on the field, and you get to destroy, which is pretty cool. That was it for the Punk archetype. Now for the Exorcister archetype, we Exorcister Elise, where its effect is basically Cyber Dragon, it's basically Cyber Dragon, which is pretty cool. And then it has the second half of that effect says if you control Exorcister Stella, you gain 800 life points. It has another effect where it says if your opponent moves a card or cards out of either graveyard except during the damage step, you can special summon from your extra deck an Exorcister Exceeds monster using the face-up card you control as the material, which is not too bad. It's actually pretty good. And then Stella is basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing. Yeah. So basically it's the same thing, but the first effect says during your main phase you can special summon an Exorcister monster from your hand. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now Irene, on the other hand, has a different effect where it reads you can place one Extra Sister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, draw one card. Then if you control Extra Sister Sophia, you gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves cards out of either graveyard except during the damage step, summon and exceed one. So each of the effect monsters has the effect where you can exceed summon and Extra Sister using that monster as the material. But their first effects are a little bit different. The first two that I mentioned, both Elisa and Stella, have the Cyber Dragon effect. Now Irene and Sophia have the first effect where Irene says, again, place one Extra Sister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, draw one card. Sophia's effect says, if you control another Extra Sister monster, you can draw one card. Then if you control Irene, you gain 800 life points. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad, but again, timing will always be everything. So you have to steer. So you have to be careful with how you build these newer decks. That's why for me, I'm more of an old school person when it comes to building decks, because I know that the older decks do not miss timing, but these newer ones oftentimes can miss timing. Now as far as the Xyz monsters, we have Extra Sister, Michaelis, I believe is how it's pronounced, and Caspatel. Both of their first effects cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summon from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. And they both say, and I believe Michaelis says, if you control this card that was Xyz summoned this turn by using an Extra Sister monster as material, as a quick effect, target a card your opponent controls or in the grave, banish it. You can detach the material from this card, add an Extra Sister spell trap from your deck to your hand. So not only is this a bottomless trapple slash cosmic cyclone, but it's also spell trap Rhoda, which is pretty cool. Now Caspatel on the other hand has a different effect, has a different second effect where it reads, if this card is Xyz summoned using an Extra Sister monster as material, neither player can special summon a monster from the graveyard for the rest of the turn. You can detach one material from his card and an Extra Sister monster from your deck to your hand. So with Caspatel, not only is this a dimensional barrier, but it's also a Stratos for the deck as well, which that's actually pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. Now Gabrine and Sophiel have the same first effect where it reads, cannot be destroyed by the activated effects of monsters special summon from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. Gabrine says, if you control this card that was Xyz summoned this turn by using an Extra Sister monster as material as a quick effect, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of the turn. You can detach one material from this card. For the rest of the turn, all Xyz monsters you control gain 800 life points. As Sophiel says, if this card is Xyz summoned using an Extra Sister monster as material, now the player can activate card effects in the graveyard this turn. You can detach one material from this card, target a monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand. So basically with Gabrine, it acts as sort of like an infinite impermanence but in the form of an Xyz monster, where with Sophiel, it acts sort of like a Necro Valley of sorts for the deck, which is pretty cool. But it's also a compulsory evacuation device as well, which is not too shabby. Not too shabby. Next up, we have Extra Sister Pax, which is next up for the spells. We have Extra Sister Pax, where it's basically it's basically a Rhoda for the deck. to be completely blunt on it. It says during the main phase, pay 800 life points, add one extra sister card from your deck to your hand, and accept this card. Then, if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it. If the other extra sister monster mentioned on it is on your field or grave, you can add. Oh, okay. Then, if you added a monster by the effect, you can special summon it if the other extra sister monster is mentioned on it. If the other extra sister monster mentioned on it is on your field or your graveyard. Sorry. So again, it's basically Rhoda. It's basically a Rhoda Cyber Rev system. So to speak. So what I mean by that is the Rhoda effect. You're adding it to your hand, but if a monster. But if the other exorcism monster that's mentioned in the one you added is on the field, you can summon the added card, which is not too bad. Next up, we have Exorcister Armament, which is a quick play spell, and its effect reads: pay 800 life points, then target one Exorcister monster you control. Special summon an Exorcister Exceeds monster from your extra deck with a different name than the cards you control, by using the target as material. You can only activate one armament per turn. You can only activate these cards during your opponent's turn, unless your opponent controls a monster supposed to summon from the graveyard. So it basically acts as sort of like a kind of like a Ring of Magic quick chaos of sorts, where you can just see something during your opponent's turn, which is pretty crazy. Then of course we have Exorcister Carpet Divum, I believe is how it's pronounced, which is the continuous spell. Neither player can target Exorcist or monster control with effects of monsters that were supposed to summon from the graveyard. So it basically acts as a protection for the Exorcist or monsters, which is really good. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you exceed summon an Exorcist or monster, excuse me, you can declare one card name, negate the activated effects and the effects on the field of cards with that original name until the end of the turn. When an attack is declared involving your Exorcist or monster, target of spell, trap, your opponent controls, destroyed. So not only is this a protection, but it's also a prohibition and an MST. I have to admit, that's actually pretty good. I have to admit, that's pretty good. I would consider that to be the most broken card in the entire archetype, which is absolutely insane. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It again, timing can always be everything. Everything is always everything. So you got to be careful with how you build these newer decks. Because as I said before, sometimes with these newer decks, it can miss timing, but they can also, as well, miss using the effect. So they're kind of so they kind of come in hand in hand, so to speak. But then, of course, the trap we have Exorcister Vadis. That is, I believe it's how it's pronounced. Pay 800 life points. Choose one Exorcister monster from your deck. Then take the other Exorcister monster from your deck that is mentioned on that monster and special summon both, but shuffle them into the deck during the end phase. Also, for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra except Exorcister monsters. So, obviously, this is a way to. This card basically just allows you to instantly go into your Xyz monsters really quickly, really fucking fast. Next up, we have now for the token archetype, so to speak. We have Rite of Aramsir, I believe how it's pronounced. If you control no adventure token, special summon one adventure token, which is a 4-star Earth Fairy, 2000 attack and defense. Then, if you do not control Faithful Adventure, you can place one Faithful Adventure from your deck. face up in your spell and trap zone. You cannot activate the effects of monsters in the field the turn you activate this effect, except special summon monsters. You can only activate one per turn. So, again, token spam, go into your link plays, nothing too crazy. Which is just broken on its own. It's just too broken on its own like that. By the way, shout outs to Starbucks for this triple shot. Not sponsored, just love Starbucks. Guys, Starbucks, follow. Guys, Starbucks, sponsor me. Let's do it. Next up, we have Water Enchantress of the Temple, which is a 3-star water spellcaster with 1500 attack and 1200 defense. And its effect reads, if you control an adventure token, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can banish the card from your hand or grave, add 1 Rite of Aramsir from your deck or grave to your hand. If you control an adventure token, you can place a field spell that mentions adventure token from your deck face up in your field zone. You can only use each effect once per turn. So basically, if you open with, if you were to open Rite and Water Enchantress, you can activate Rite, summon the adventure token, special summon the Enchantress, and then just combo off from there. But you get to also add Faithful Adventure directly to your back row, and you can trigger its effects right off the bat, which is just absolutely insane. Then of course we have Magikor, Warrior of the Relics, which is a 4-star fire warrior with 2300 attack and 1000 defense. And it says, cannot attack unless you control an adventure token. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you control an adventure token, you can special summon this card from your hand. At the end of the battle phase, if your monster that mentions adventure token battled, you can set a trap that mentions the card that mentions adventure token directly from your deck. Trap Rhoda, it's basically red reboot. But you're not negating the trap, which is absolutely insane. Then, of course, we have Wandering Griffin Rider. This is one of the most broken. This is probably one of the most broken cards in the whole archetype, because its effect reads, during the main phase, if you control no monsters or control an adventure token as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. When a card or effect is activated while you control an adventure token, as a quick effect, you can shuffle this card into the deck, and if you do, negate that activation. If you do, destroy it. Destroy that, and if you do that, destroy that card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So it's basically, again, it's Cyber Dragon, Solemn Judgment, which is just insane. Then of course we have Faithful Adventure, which is pretty broken. Once per turn, the first time a monster you control equipped with a quick spell would be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed. Would be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. During your main phase, you can add a monster that mentions adventure token from your deck to your hand, then send a card from your hand to the grave. If a monster or monsters is normal special summon, you can take an equipped spell that mentions adventure token from your deck, either add it to your hand or equip it to an adventure token you control. So basically, it's basically Rhoda for equips, and there are three equips. We have Dunnel, the Noble Arms of Light, Starlit Papillon, and Dragobag, the Rideable Dragon. Each one has the same first effect, where it says equip only to a monster you control. You can only control one of that name. Meaning one Dunnel, one Starlit Papillon, and one Dragobag, the Rideable Dragon. But they have their own second effect. Dunel, I believe is how it's pronounced, has the second effect where it reads, the equipped monster gains 500 attack for each card you control, with a different name that mentions adventure token. If this card is sent to the grave, You can target one adventure token you control, equip this card to that target, who will use this effect once per turn. Starlit Papillon has the second effect where it reads, monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack for each monster you control with a different name that mentions adventure token. If this card is sent to the grave, target adventure token you control, equip this card to that target. So basically, basically each of these 3 equips has the same first and third effects, but the second effect is totally different. It's totally different. Dunel, as I mentioned, has the effect where the equipped monster gains 500 attack for each monster you control with a different name that mentions adventure token. Starlit Papillon has the effect where monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack for each monster you control with a different name that mentions adventure token. Now Dracoback is a little bit better than the other 2, because Dracoback reads you can only use the following effects once per turn. While this card is equipped to a non-effect monster, you can target one card your opponent controls, return it to the hand. Which is just absolutely insane. Basically insane. It's insane. It's a compulse, which is just insane. Then for the field spells, we have Zara Lamb, the Dark Palace, and Forest of Lost Flowers. Zara Lamb has the effect where it reads, while you control a monster equipped with Dunel, the Noble Arms of Light, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects during the battle phase. Once per turn, when an adventure token destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that destroyed monster's original attack. Once per turn during your main phase, if the previous effect was activated this turn, you can add a field spell that mentions adventure token from your deck or grave to the hand except this card. So you can basically just add Forest of Lost Flowers, where it works with Starlit Papillon. And with Forest of Lost Flowers, where its effect reads, monsters you control equipped with Starlit Papillon are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. Once per turn, when your adventure token destroys a monster by battle, you can draw 1 card. Once per turn during the main phase, if the previous effect was activated, add a field spell that mentions adventure token from your deck or grave to your hand except this card. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I would say this archetype and the last one, the Exorcist archetype, could very may well define the meta, but it all depends on how you build the decks. Which, again, these newer archetypes, as I said, can sometimes miss timing, so you got to be careful with that. Next up, we have Thunder Discharge, where the trap reads, if you control an adventure token, you can target a monster you control equipped with a equipped card that mentions adventure token, destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible with attack less than or equal to that monster. Then you can equip an equip spell that mentions adventure token from your hand or grave, from your hand or grave to one monster you control. You only activate 1 Thunder Discharge per turn. So again, it acts as sort of like a dark hole, sort of like a Regeki of sorts for the deck, which is pretty good. Now, Breath of Resurrection is basically Monster Reborn. So the effect reads: if you control an adventure token, special summon up to 2 monsters from your hand or grave with different names, but banish them when they leave the field. You can equip 1 equipped spell that mentions this card, that mentions adventure token from your hand or grave to a monster you control. You can only activate Breath of Resurrection once per turn. But it says banish when they leave the field. How do you bypass that? Use the monsters as Xyz material. That's the only way. You cannot do anything else, which is just insane. Then, of course, we have the create a card world premiere card, which is known as Zektrike Kuo. And it says this card is always treated as an Exector card. Send 1 other Exector card from your hand or face-up field to the grave, then activate one of these effects. Choose one Inzektor monster from your deck and either special summon it or equip it to an Inzektor monster you control. Equip one Inzektor equip spell from your deck to one Inzektor monster you control. So this basically acts as a way to ensure that your plays go through, and you basically get to it's kind of like Rhoda, but it's basically two for one. So the 2 for 1 meaning you're sending this card and another card in your hand or face of field to the grave to add another card. It's a 2 for 1, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I guess you could replace the card on the field with the summons and with the special summon effect. I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I feel like the effect of this card could have been better, because this was a part of the 2020 Create a Card project. Because this was a part of the Create a Card project that took place back in 2020. And I think it was like during the summer, if I remember correctly. It was like during the summer of 2020, and I feel like the effect of this card could have been so much better. It could have been so much better than this. But the reprints of the set, we have the Inzektor archetype. We have Hornet, Centipede, Dragonfly, Hopper, Ladybug. We have Risebell the Star Adjuster, which I don't think I ever talked about this card. But the effect reads: when this card is supposed to summon, you can target a face-up monster in the field, increase its level by up to 3 until the end of the turn. Perfect for perfect for the Inzektors, because you can easily you can go into synchro plays, Xyz plays just with this alone, so it could be useful. Goku Pole, Psychic Wielder, Psychic Tracker, Virtual World Hime, Nyan Nyan, Inzektor Exabeetle, Exastag, Castel the Sky Blaster Musketeer, Inzektor Picofalinia, which is actually a really good link for the Inzektors. If this card is link summoned, you could discard a card, target one other insect monster you control, equip one insect from your deck to it as an equip spell that gains this effect. The equipped monster gains 500 attack and defense. You can target 3 insect monsters in your grave, shuffle them into the deck, draw 1 card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this acts as not only does this act as like a kind of like a Maha Vilo where the monster gains 500 attack, but it's also a really bad Pot of Avarice. It's a bad Pot of Avarice, but it's a good Pot of Avarice at the same time. And then of course we have Insect Imitation, Ties of the Brethren, Hidden Armory, Emergency Teleport. Shockingly, and I don't even know why this card is back up at 2. I don't know what the hell. Inzektor Sword, Zect Caliber, which is actually a really good equip spell for them. Torrential Tribute. Excuse me. Xyz Universe, Solemn Strike, and Armory Call. Which Armory Call is just really broken. So that's the full set list. My thoughts on it: I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good set, with the Exorcisters being able to summon each other to the field and be able to protect each other, and with the Avenger Token art archetype being able to just protect one another and just pop cards on your opponent's field is actually not too shabby in my honest opinion. But I will admit the Punk archetype, not the best. It's not the best. It's not the best because this is one of those archetypes that can miss timing when it's used when it's built in a different way. When it's built correctly, then yes, this deck could really change the meta. But as far as like the one deck that could change the meta, hands down has to be the Extra Sister archetype. Not because of the fact that they're waifus. No, it's because of the fact that it's because of the fact that it's basically the fact that Alice and Stella can summon one another. Irene and Sophia can also summon one another, which is just absolutely insane. You've got so many ways to just thin out your deck and just go for game right off the bat, which is insane. There's with this archetype, there's no telling how good this deck would be. But but overall, not the best. The reprints are just like really bad, really bad reprints. I mean, sure, yeah, the Injectors. But the Injectors haven't gotten any support in years. It's been years. And this Create a Card Project World Premiere card, this is the first support for them in years. So the reprints are just bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, Solemn Strike, Torrential Tribute, those are probably the only two cards as far as the reprints. Those are going to be like the only two cards, and Castell. Those are like going to be the only three that collectors are going to want to go after, especially given the fact that I think they come in as collector's rares, if I remember correctly. I know Tribute does and Strike does, but Castell, I am not entirely sure. But would I recommend this set? No, I would not, because I'm sure that the Extra Sister archetype are going to be like less than $5 as far as value goes. They're going to most likely be less than 5. So I would just say with this set, go for the singles. That's just my honest opinion. If you guys want to buy the cases, you're more than welcome to, but I'm just saying go for the singles. But that is going to do it for this episode of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue. That brings me to the question of the day. Out of all three of these archetypes, which one are you gonna play the most? Let me know in the comments below, and that is going to do it for this episode of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want to see more episodes, which get posted every Friday, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links will be in the description below. And if you guys have any fan mail you want to send me and want me to open up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.